Before you watch this video, please do the pretest on page 16. Today, we're going to talk about the passive voice and participial adjectives. What is the passive? The passive voice has two types, the dynamic and the stative. An example of the dynamic passive is that first sentence. The class was taught by a young professor. Dynamic passives use active verbs like teach. There are also stative passives, like the second sentence. The class was composed of mostly women. Stative passives describe situations. The passive voice can be used in any verb tense. The important thing is that the passive includes some form of the verb be and a past participle. The tense information is on the to be verb, and the inclusion of the past participle is what makes it the passive. Here are some examples. Essays are typed on computers. This is the simple present. It's composed of the verb to be, are, and a past participle, typed. Notice that the verb are is in the simple present tense. The second sentence is in the simple past. Essays were typed on computers. So this sentence also consists of a to be verb and a past participle. And the to be verb is in the simple past form. The third sentence is in the simple future. Essays will be typed on computers. So will be is the verb in the simple future, and then the past participle is what makes it passive. Next, present perfect. Essays have been typed on computers for several decades. Have been is in the present perfect form, and then typed is in the past participle, and that's what makes it passive. Next is past perfect. Essays had been typed on typewriters before computers. Had been is the verb to be in the past perfect form, and then typed is the past participle, which is what makes it passive. And finally, the last example is in future perfect. Essays will have been typed on computers for 100 years in 2090. So will have been is the verb to be in the future perfect, and then the verb typed is included there, the past participle form, because it's a passive construction. A few more things about forms of passive. First, you may use the passive with modals, like essays should be typed on computers. So should be is the verb to be with a modal in front of it. Or essays may have been typed on computers. That's the past form with a modal. And verbs should also follow any rules requiring gerund or infinitive complements. So essays are required to be typed on computers. Or essays keep being typed on computers. So these gerund or infinitive complements are in the passive form. At this point, please do self-check 1 on page 19, and then check your answers. You may pause the video now. Here are the answers to self-check 1. Next, we're going to talk about using the passive voice. voice. There are several reasons to use the passive voice. The passive voice in English is not as common as it is in other languages. It's used only in certain situations. And some of these situations include emphasizing or de-emphasizing information. If you want to emphasize the receiver or the object of an action, you might use the passive. Or if you want to de-emphasize the doer or the agent of the action, you could also use the passive. In the passive, the receiver of the action is emphasized because it is the subject of the sentence. The doer or agent of the action is de-emphasized because it's included in the by phrase, or not at all. You can also use the passive to aid in the flow of ideas when you write. So for example, the first sentence there is active. ESL 53 students will write 6 essays. And then the next sentence is in the passive. The essays will be based on readings done for class. So we'll write 6 essays, and then that essays becomes the subject of the next sentence in the passive. And this aids the flow of ideas in your writing. Sometimes, in the passive, you might use what's called the by phrase, but it's used only rarely because the by phrase includes the agent or the doer of the action. And because in the passive the emphasis is on the receiver of the action, the by phrase is often eliminated. So for example, essays are usually typed on computers. You could end the sentence there. Essays are usually typed on computers, period. Very rarely would you include the by phrase, by students. If you look on page 21, number 3, you'll see a list of verbs, including arrive, be, become, belong, come, die, and so on. These are verbs that are not used with the passive. And what all these verbs have in common is that they are intransitive verbs. That is, they do not require objects. So, for example, the verb arrive, you just say, I arrived, period. There's no object in that sentence, only a subject. Therefore, it cannot become passive. Or, another example, exist. You can't say, computers have been existed for many decades, because exist does not take an object. So it makes no sense. You can only use exist in the active form. Computers have existed for many decades. There are different ways to form the passive, including with have or get. So the first example, the couple got married. That is an example of the passive with get. So you have the verb get in some form, and then the past participle, married. And it emphasizes the process of marriage, for example. You could also say the couple was married, but that emphasizes the result of the action. When you say the couple got married, what you have in your mind is the process, the planning, the inviting of guests, the finding the place to get married, ordering food, finding your wedding dress and wedding tuxedo, and so the process of getting married. And then the second sentence is an example of the passive with have. So the man had his hair cut. So have, and then you have some object, his hair, and then cut. At this point, please pause the video and do self-check 2 on page 23. Please pause the video now. Here are the answers to self-check 2. Now, let's talk about what are called participial adjectives. Some common examples are listed on page 25. So, the participial adjectives come in pairs with a past participle form and a gerund form, or also known as the present participle form. So some examples are amazed and amazing, excited, exciting, tired, tiring, annoyed, annoying. You use the ing or gerund form to describe the cause or situation. It's the active form of the verb. So the movie is amazing. So the movie is the thing that is causing the amazement. The ed form, or past participle form, is used to describe the result or effect of the cause and applies to the receiver of the action. So I am amazed. So I am the receiver of the amazement. So the movie could be the cause and I could be the receiver. So the ed form is used to describe me, and the ing form is used to describe the movie. At this point, please do self-check 3 on page 25. Here are the answers to self-check 3. Now, please do the editing practice exercises on pages 25 to 29 for extra practice before you take the quiz.